Welcome to Complicated Opportunities, a CosmereRPG podcast with a couple of GMs. This week, we are back with the last part of our kind of revisit to prepping for a campaign. So, previously, we've talked about revisiting Session 0 and the different player types. So, the last place we wanted to end on is how to take the information you gather from Session 0, knowing your player types, and kind of prep for your campaign. So we've got a few different points that we want to get into, and I'll go ahead and get us started. So the first thing is, to me, when you're planning, a really fun way to help, one, make sure your session 0, like the time is worth it for you, but two, reward your players for taking the time to come up with these backstories, is create story beats that will connect backstories to moments in your campaign or in the books. Irving, do you have anything you want to, any examples that you have?
I mean, so this is something that I don't. This is where we get into the like, oh, Irving doesn't do much planning. I am always open for these moments, but I don't like orchestrate for them or like bend the arc of the campaign to fit them unless it feels natural. So, in my home game, one of my characters, their story is that they come from a noble family, but that noble family's been disgraced some way, and the whole reason they work for the foreign church is because of that blackmail. So they're kind of a landless noble at the start. Through just weird shenanigans, they end up getting offered the signet ring to a very minor noble house, and now we're starting this whole what'll be like a minor political intrigue section of the game because they're taking over an estate. And that ties into their backstory and something that their character would want, but it wasn't something I planned from the start. It was just a moment that came about organically. And
Yeah.
it was just kind of like perfect like that. And you'll have those sort of moments. I have an Iriali hunter who's like has she doesn't know much about Stormlight at all, but she's really gotten into the idea of trying to find new experiences for the one. So I periodically will say things like, "Well, I don't think the one's experienced this before," and then she's like, "Oh yeah, all right, we're gonna do it."
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think in homebrew campaigns, especially, that can be a little more, um, like it can be a little more free flowing like that.
And I think it's way easier in a homebrew
Yes.
campaign generally.
Yeah. So like the only long campaign I've done was Stonewalkers, and so with mine, I had a couple players that really fleshed out a backstory. I had a few that did and a few that didn't. But the two that really did, one, he was doing it more for motivation purposes. He didn't really necessarily want to explore that in the campaign. But the other one, she was all game for it. She basically was like, break me. um, so I did look for moments where I could add in like different callbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And tie in things that they had worked on. Like specifically for her, she had a fiance, and I kept that as like a little like a running theme in the campaign where she would, and she did too. So like during downtime, she would go to the span reads and try to find out if there was any more information about him or try to reconnect to the war camps. So even just like having those little moments like that make the world feel lived in and feel like their backstory matters beyond just motivation.
Yeah.
But yeah, in one where when you're playing a pre-written adventure, like you definitely just kind of have to look for, okay, like where can I work that in when I have time.
Yeah,
um
absolutely. And I think you hit on a very good point here. That is maybe the easiest way to incorporate backstory is NPCs from their backstory. Uh,
yes.
Bringing in a character that they will be able to like relate to, know they have a connection to. It gets them involved in the story, and it keeps them interested and on the hook. So when I set about making my campaign, and I didn't like force them to come up with an exact answer and give me all the details, but I said, think of what the church has on you that they would use as blackmail to keep you like on the hook and working for them. Uh, and so, for Nikki's character, that noble, it's the promise of getting back some standing. Uh, Now she's discovering new ways to get standing that maybe aren't tied to the church, and she can really evaluate that relationship. Uh, Chris's character, he's a Herdasian shepherd, and he just was like, yeah, I think they like took over and basically took me as a child to like mold me and recruit me, but I have this like deep connection to Herdaz and trying to like find my roots. So for him, I sprinkle in a lot of Herdasian NPCs. And the first one, did the whole like everyone's cousin, uh, very buddy buddy connecting, and so he latched onto that. And this most recent Herdasian NPC is a little stiffer, so he's getting to see some like variation in that. And he's like, maybe we're cousins, but I don't know about you.
I love that.
And so like there's good ways to, you can use exact NPCs in like a character's family members or direct from their backstory, or you can use like the themes, which would be the example of Chris and the Herdasians. Uh, you know, One of my other players, the Iriali, she obviously doesn't have like super deep connections. She has a sister that she hasn't alluded to what happened to, so I'm like cautiously speckling in things to see if they fit her vibe. I really should just ask her what she thinks happened. Uh, and then Josh, his character is a horn eater, but like similar to Chris, I think doesn't have full connection to his roots. So there's lots of that searching for belonging, and so you can do that really well by incorporating NPCs that maybe fit some like stereotypes or traits that are like very common to their respective people.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, NPCs I think are the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And then I'm actually going to flip to the spots in here. I'm actually going to go to I think the obstacles first. And so when I talked about the incorporating obstacles, it's like while you're building that character, like I do in a session 0 specifically in the Cosmere, like because it helps me keep it narratively focused, is with these obstacles that you have, like focusing on ways they can eventually overcome them in story beats. Because that's like if you say that your obstacle is like you can be extremely stubborn or something like that. Like I'm going to give those moments where like I notice that you're taking a pretty hardline stance about something. So I'm going to like bring an NPC in that's going to have the opposite stance. And just so it gives you that chance to, hey, I want to be stubborn about this, but then do you want to try to overcome this? Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. Totally fine either way. I don't mind. But it is a way that you can use something that your players have already thought about to then try to make different story elements happen. And especially in Stormlight, like that can help with ideals, that can help with gaining rewards, stuff like that. But I think that that's a good way to also reward the effort they're putting into building that character. But you mentioned something that's going to, like, I'm almost tying two things in where, like, I would use that to check in with people. Like, hey, is there, because, like, a lot of times I'm going to tell someone, especially when we were playing Stonewalkers, it's like, hey, we're going to Wrathlas next. Like, so one of my players, that's where his dad was stationed when he was a child, but he doesn't remember any of it. But so it would give us that opportunity to like, hey, do you want to put like, do you want me to work in some of the stuff there? Do you want me to add things your character would recognize, or just letting them know, hey, there's also the opportunity for you to do that as well. Um,
Mhm.
so
Yeah. I
taking
think I
that.
really like when players are confident enough to try and sprinkle in a little bit of something. And it's, it's always okay for you to say, I don't think that's here, but, we can look for where it might be. But, try to say yes sometimes, and you'll find yourself having something interesting to work with. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Particularly for Cosmere, having the like purpose and obstacle, I think are very interesting. They're more, to me, they're roleplay notes for the character. Um, and as long as they inform how your like player wants to role play, they're serving their purpose. I don't see it like personally for me. I think general play should pull in your obstacle or purpose. If it's obscure enough that like normal adventuring doesn't sort of trigger it, why did you write it down? Um,
So I think that's also because though you've played a lot longer. So for me, like I'm not super comfortable. I like I'm getting a lot more comfortable with role play, but it's still something I'm really getting better at. So as a player, when I write down those obstacles, those purposes, that helps me with like remembering to get into character and not
mhm.
react how Kyle would react, but react how
Oh yeah,
my
yeah. I'm
character
as a
would.
player, I think that's where they're useful.
Yeah.
As a GM, I think that you can do some work to try and incorporate them, but they're really not for you. Uh, but you know, in the session zero, having conversations with your characters and making sure they know the importance that those items can serve for them to role play, I think is really important. But you'll also have some players that are more discovery, um, like they find their character through discovery and playing with them. I
Yeah.
very rarely set out with like a firm obstacle. I just try to find who the character is, and then I'm like, okay, this is their obstacle. They are a selfish, like a fundamentally selfish person, or they just can't let something go. You know, uh, those sort of traits that I realize about them.
Mhm. Yeah, see, I think where I've found it useful from the GM side is more there are so many people that they're used to building mechanics. I play with a lot of people that like really just play video games for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not used to getting in the head of the characters. So during the session zero, like I try to pull out of them a little bit more of that building the character. So that way too, when we're playing, I can remind them like, hey, you mentioned that your character like their family had a gambling problem. Like that was something that
Mm-hmm.
one of my characters had. His like he got into gambling debts and it caused his parents to get in some kind of trouble. And so I had to remind him though a couple times, like we go into the when you're going to meet lists, it's like if you want to jump in this game, you can.
Yeah, it's right
And
there.
um and he definitely did it was cool because it was one of my players who wouldn't normally role play much. And he was kind of like playing the like I'm super excited to do this, but oh crap, what am I gonna do if I do this? Like it gave them
Yeah.
that moment and reminder of like, oh yeah, I did write that down. I did make that part of my character. So it helps the people that are sometimes a little more like along for the ride, jump in and contribute to the role play. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that I guess that is like backstory stuff, but I guess that was also their obstacle. So that can be helpful. It is fun to like tease them, be like, "Hey, you got this whole issue here. What are you gonna do? How do you think your character would act?" That might be the magical phrase. How do you think your character would act? And that gets them to like, "Oh wait, yeah, he might do something stupid here." Um,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I like working those in because it just gives you that like when I try to build my characters and add an obstacle, like yes, your character is a level 1 character, but that doesn't mean they haven't lived, 20, 30 years of a life up to this point. So,
Well, yeah, I think that, yes, you're starting your adventure as a level 1 character most of the time. You can still have like a backstory that, incorporates you having done some stuff. Obviously, don't be crazy. You didn't, solve the world and everything, but
mhm,
this could be a second career for you. You could have had some traumatic event and there's a reason you're starting over, but you still have like some knowledge and character, like, you know, backstory from before when you were more competent or more comfortable in whatever field you were in.
yep.
Uh, so I think that that's a very interesting and fun opportunity. Now, specifically with Stormlight, something that's very important to all of these are if they're going to take a radiant path and working about like with your players on their ideals. Uh,
Yeah.
Fortunately, the first ideal is the same either way, and it's pretty clear. But when you start getting to those secondary ideals, you gotta, you know, either you, the player, come up with them if you have a lot of knowledge, or if you don't have a lot of knowledge, maybe the GM should approach you and discuss, hey, this is sort of the vibe of the Sprenbond you're going for. Do you think, what do you think would make this ideal personal to your character?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think working with your characters to help create those, um, like those ideals, especially the ones that really need help with it. Like, you know, I'm at the point now I have what, 3 Stormlight tattoos. Like I've probably thought a lot about what my my radiant bonds would be if I was playing a Stone Ward.
mhm.
Um, but someone might not have, and especially if you've got the ones like Else Callers and Light Weavers where it's a much more personal bond. Um, and they're very different. Um, that can be something where they might need help. Um, So like to me as a GM, like you're there to help guide the players, tell the story that like you've set up the adventure, but to me, once the players start playing it, it becomes their story. So like I want to help shepherd them on how they want to do it. Um, so that's one of those things where I'll check in between like, hey, do you know what you want your ideal to be? If you do, tell me what it is, because then I'm going to try to work ways in that you can start swearing that.
Mhm.
Um, So, because like I want the player to be able to do that. I'm not going to sit there and like hold off them swearing an ideal. I don't care if I've got 2 or 3 of them that swear it in a session, like whatever. Like if it makes sense for the way we're telling the story, then let's roll with it. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so I definitely want to check in between sessions and see like do they have an idea of where they're wanting to go with their character, so that I can try to present that. Especially with Stonewalkers when we were doing that, like I was trying really hard to, like I would move some of the story beats around if needed, or purposely put in a scene or an NPC that would help drive that character towards the ideal they're wanting to swear.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Now,
So
where do you
then,
want to take this next, Kyle? What point do you think
yeah,
makes
I
most
mean, so really at that point, like I think we've covered most of the story elements. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing that I do want to point out is mechanics. Like we talked about in our different types of characters, there's 2 or 3 that the playing the character and the mechanics that they want to interact with um can matter a lot. And like I'm a character like that. Like if I'm taking a talent, I want to make sure I can help people find cool stuff that they can do. Um
Absolutely, yeah.
so like we talked a little bit about this in the building encounters and whatnot, but like if somebody takes meteoric leap, like that is a really cool ability that's locked behind tier 2, I think. So like they've been building towards taking that. I want to make sure I'm going to find ways to use it in a combat or something like that. Um so making sure that you're giving those mechanically inclined characters and mechanically inclined players ways to use those mechanics and use those talents is pretty important to me.
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree with you entirely there. Making sure that their like choices feel like they matter. You know, if someone takes, I'm trying to, we used a combat oriented talent, but like the faithful tree of the envoy, the
Mhm.
one where they can talk someone down. If you don't give them an opportunity to talk someone down, what was the point of them taking that talent?
Right.
That's, potentially a tenth of their character power. Say the average game ends at like level 10. That's maybe a tenth of their character power they never got to use.
Yeah. So yeah, making sure that you're being mindful of that is a big deal. Now, if you've also just got players that like want to hit stuff really hard, make sure to add an extra combat or two in there. Like, or find ways to like one of my favorite. I was rewatching or well watching for the first time, I guess. The Vox Machina campaign recently, and like Matt found at least 2 to 3 different ways because Travis is like notoriously ADD during like shopping and conversational scenes. So like he found a couple places where Grog could get into a fighting ring and have
Mm-hmm.
a duel with somebody. Like
Yep. Yeah, and then that ended up being really important as you continue that whole duel in Vasselheim, if I'm thinking if that's what you're talking about.
yeah, I think so with the monk.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, like that becomes super huge to that character. Um so like if you've got someone like that, like make a scene where everybody goes and bets on him at the fighting ring. like or like if there's wrestling tournaments or if you've got somebody who's trying to win a shard blade, like do the Adolin thing where you're trying to get people to challenge you or like you're trying to goad somebody into putting their shard blade on the line. Um like make sure to think outside the box sometimes where just because they're a mechanically oriented character doesn't mean that it needs to be um only in combat. Like find ways that they can use those abilities outside of combat. And don't get me wrong, like there's also like what is it, practice kata. I think that if you're a warrior, you can actually use your stances in combat or in conversations.
Yeah, you
But
can enter stances in conversation.
yeah, so
I
like
Does the
go ahead.
duelist tree, sorry, this is an interruption a little bit. Does the duelist tree have a way to force people to get into a duel with you?
I don't believe it does, or if it does, I don't remember it. Um so like because I think the
It
duelist
does
tree is much
not.
more. Yeah, I was
Hmm.
thinking it's much more once you actually get the blade. Um
Yeah, it's much more like you're in combat. I think that would have like I guess there is steadfast challenge in the envoy tree, right? Is that an envoy?
yeah, well, and I'm thinking it would be more like that's where you can use the goals. Like when
Mm-hmm.
you're part of your and I want to say there it might have even been it might be in the book, but it also might be just from like one of the YouTube videos when they were leading up to the Kickstarter. But where they talked about like if you're setting your goal of hey, I want to win a shard blade, so like goal one or tick one is building into the campaign like hey, here's a place where you can get some leads on how to enter the dueling ranks.
Mm-hmm.
Then tick two might be getting your first duel scheduled, or you've knocked out a couple duels. Now you're finally moving up the ranks enough to start challenging for a blade. And then tick three is the duel, where you actually get to challenge someone for the blade and whatnot. Or that can be a multi layered goal where, like, your first goal might just be enter the dueling ranks. And then the second goal that unlocks after that is um, trying to schedule the duel and then knowing that the reward at the end of the second set is going to be the blade. Because I believe Sharp Blade's a tier one. It might be a tier two reward. I don't remember now. Um, when you're doing the starting at higher levels, but like you can easily layer that in. And that would keep a character who is probably more mechanically focused, wanting to build towards just being able to hit with Shard Blade hard. Um, like that will keep them engaged in some of those story beats as you're moving along the path there.
Yeah, yeah, I think absolutely. Uh trying to fit that like mechanic ideal is important. And then with big goals, it is very easy to like make those significant story beats. I do think using the goals and reward system is probably the toughest new thing to this system for people.
Yeah, for me, it's a combination of that and the conversations. Like trying to mechanicalize a conversation is still something I can struggle with, but especially for like multiple players, like because to me the conversation be things much more from the GM perspective, but as a player, coming up with like a meaningful goal and what do I want to earn? Because so many of us are just geared towards I win combat, get cool sword. Like those aren't as prevalent in this system. Um, so making sure that you're working with your player to come up with like one of the things we started doing towards the end of my Stonewalkers campaign was very like, okay, so you're wanting to set this goal. What do you think the reward for that should be? Like, what do you want to get out of this goal? Um, so one, engaging the players more on that. Um, but as a GM, like you probably need to have some backup ideas too, in case they're like, oh,
Yeah, having some
because
backup
that's real.
ideas is really important. And I think that really, if your players aren't like super comfortable with the goal system, you can sort of incentivize it and like help them work through it with some like clear and easy ones. But you can also just like sneak those own things in on your own time, since it's something you track.
Mhm.
So like really the like minor noble, like becoming a minor noble, that's the reward of a goal. It wasn't something explicitly on the character sheet, but their actions up to that point kind of led them in that direction. They were basically growing as a leader, and someone who is plotting and like always looking for this thing, and then the opportunity presented itself and it made sense. So yeah, absolutely use that sort of reward to fulfill an untracked goal, as you would like, I think is what I would call it. um and then you can
Yeah.
kind of explain why you rewarded it the way you did, to the player, and they can be like, oh, this is something I could have just put on my character sheet. um yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really good, like they do have a really good, it's a shorter chapter, but the chapter on goals and rewards, like really is helpful with walking through ways to do that. Um,
Well, and we've had 2 episodes about goals and rewards.
yeah.
And
So it's
then
clearly something
there's
people like,
this that we're talking about now, and I think still people ask about goals and rewards.
yeah.
um so like I said, I think it is the biggest sort of hurdle for people, and it's pretty important, and it is like a cool lever to have at your disposal, and especially to have it so apparent. you
Yeah.
know um the
Yeah.
like yeah, just I also think companions are pretty underutilized. People are like afraid of rewarding companions, but do it. Do it.
Yeah.
It can be an accent, it can be a chull, it could be just a regular soldier. Um there's like balancing guidelines and all for that.
When having one that develops like is really cool. Like
Yeah.
that's, you've got a bodyguard. And I mean, because even when you think about, oh, I can't remember the character's name, but I think it's in Words of Radiance, the body, because I think he's Herdasian, the bodyguard that Dalinar gets after Bridgefort's kind of like running off, who's like kind of giving him pushback and giving him grief the whole time.
Oh
Like,
no, that's one of the bridgemen in Oathbringer,
okay,
who
yeah,
is
like,
like assigned to Dalinar's room guard, and like he's
yeah,
occasionally drinking or some stuff, and Dalinar's just like, hey, should you be doing that? And he's like, no sir, I shouldn't.
but I'm going to anyway.
um
Like, yeah, like
yeah, but
because
like that's also a good way to tie in NPCs from backstories.
mhm,
You have companion rewards. That's, maybe this, like, you had beef with the village baker, but you save the town, and the baker decides, no, I'm going to serve as an attaché to this great hero of my town. So
yeah,
you overcome this story and incorporate Bob the baker. um You know,
Now,
whatever you want to call him, Babarin.
now this is totally me just going completely off script here. Um, but there was a little bit of a conversation we had on one of the discords we were on about the nemesis system from Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, that I think that could even be a fun way to incorporate some of those NPCs, where if you had like a childhood bully that
Yeah.
made you self-conscious about something, and then it's like, oh man, I'm moving up the ranks, I'm kicking butt, I'm really doing all this, and then it's like, oh, and here's your new commanding officer, boom, and it's your childhood bully. You're like, son of a like, that could be a fun way
Yeah.
to have like a recurring villain, or just a recurring thorn in the side of a character too. Um, but I also like trying to the thought of so many times in combat, it's just like, oh, you fight till you have 0 hit points, and then you stab the guy in the neck, and he goes away. But I think it could be fun to have that character where it's like you defeated them, but they get away, and then the next time they show up, like they are like, oh yeah, I worked to be able to make sure you couldn't do that to me next time. Now you don't want to just keep like completely nerfing your character's abilities, but I
Hmm.
think having a recurring NPC or a recurring villain, even if they're not the main villain of the arc, can be a fun way to also incorporate some of the backstory stuff for characters as well.
Well, oh gosh, I think it was Merrick that told us about their like satyr necromancer that is
Hmm.
a repeat villain of theirs. That, but he's just like he's a little gremlin that shows up like when a player can't make it, so they have a little like vacation episode, but still do something.
Yep.
Oh, well, I forget the name of the guy,
Yeah,
and
I don't
it's
remember,
Monday,
but
so I'm not gonna bug Merrick right now. But yeah, yeah, having some little dude like that who shows up and is just a thorn in your side,
yep.
uh, is great. Or like,
Or
even if
like
they get
Les.
dealt with pretty quick, uh, in the game session where my players got to Vadenar and were getting ready to get on their boat, they got mugged by some sailors and like promptly kicked the muggers' butts. But Chris stole one of the guy's shirts because the guy had ruined his shirt. Um, and then later, when they're attacked by pirates, surprise, some of the muggers are on the pirate crew. Because you just had to. You had to include a guy for them to hate,
Yeah.
just so they know, like, oh, we could just join the pirates. And it's like, well, do you really want to? One of them's this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are always just really good, really fun ways to create a little more to make it feel like a living world. Um,
Absolutely.
so that really about wraps up like a lot of the points that I wanted to make. I know this was going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but it's just kind of tying together what we talked about between session zero, the player types, and then how you can incorporate both things into your campaign. Um, so yeah, it's I think in one of the episodes earlier, you kind of made it like more things that Kyle learned from Stonewalkers. But like it definitely sets up like how I'm gonna do my next longer term campaign. That's not specifically a pre-written adventure that I want to
Yeah.
incorporate.
Which you'll do one day.
I will. I will.
One day you'll get
Um,
to it.
I do like
Um,
the idea that you had though that I want to make sure we highlight again. Like for yours, like why would you be working for the church? Um, because like mine, I built the like kind of prologue first chapter of the Recreants one, and it's very much like everyone is traveling to Euratheru for a reason. But it's like so you're playing an agent. So like what about you makes you need to be like why are you traveling to Euratheru? What's there that you're wanting to accomplish? So that way one, it helps them set up their first goal. It helps set up like are they there to try to join one of the Radiant Orders? Because I know in one of Dalinar's flashbacks, like the guy was like, "Oh, you're good with a sword. You should come seek us out in Euratheru. We're always looking for like new recruits." Um, like that's the kind of thing where like that just you might be going there because you want to sparring tournament or something. But it
Well,
could
or
be
like
the
your village was attacked by bandits and you helped fend them off, and then when the Radiants came, they basically had very little to do, and they're like, "Hey, you're good at this."
exactly like so. There's ways that you can do that. So that's probably the like one thing I want the players to think about, and then we'll just kind of wing it from there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's a good idea to have like, why is your group together versus we're just a bunch of people that all just happen to show up at this one thing this one time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
But I think that about wraps up our 3-part series on prepping for a campaign. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the end of that sort of thing. I don't remember if we talked about uh any tales from the table last week.
I don't. I mean, I
If we
you might
did,
have because
maybe it was because I ran Law and Obligation.
I don't think we talked about you running Law and Obligation. That happened since we recorded, so
Yeah.
or at least since we talked about it. So yeah, how'd
Well,
that go?
I
You
guess
because you
I
worked.
mean it was good. I wrapped it into my game. So I had to like kind of majorly shift the setting. I changed it from one city to another. Uh, it was way before the Everstorm.
Right.
But other than that, it mostly got to stay the same. I used it as a good opportunity to introduce the Skybreakers as a villainous force to my campaign. Uh, I don't, because I think there's the theory that Ishar starts the hierarchy, and that's his first like stint as a god king is running things, and Nail at some point gets the idea to just start killing budding radiants from Ishar,
Yeah,
which
I'm
yeah.
the worst at remembering like when all of that different stuff was going down.
Well, and who knows if that theory's correct or has been proven wrong or not now. I don't, certainly. Um,
Doesn't matter
but
because in your game, that's what's
exactly,
happening.
exactly. It doesn't matter. It's far enough away from canon. Uh, but yeah, so since my players are are taking radiant ideals, I'm letting them do that. The Skybreakers are going to start showing up as they start showing off their powers. Uh, and there was one good moment when they got to their new noble estate to stay at. Chris was like, "Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go, find a nice place in the garden, and my guy's gonna play his flute. And while he's doing that, the plants around him are gonna like spontaneously start growing a lot." And I had that opportunity to be like, "Okay, you're going to freak out every single servant in this estate as they see evidence of real magic and also a man playing an instrument." Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's just
we
like,
worked.
"Oh, yeah, I'll still do it, but oh."
Yep. Yeah, it is really fun seeing the people that aren't as familiar um with the or with the setting find out all these little quirks about Alethi society and history and how the magic works and all that good stuff. Um yeah, it is a lot of fun to
Oh
have that
yeah,
happen.
yeah. And because he's doing things like that, every time I think they take an action that like gets them noticed, I almost have like a GTA infamy slash wanted tracker.
Nice.
And like the more and more they do obvious radiant stuff, the more and more that those Stonewar or like Skybreakers are going to start looking for them. Um,
Yeah.
and so like there's
Well,
an
and
example of how to use a long-term event. I'm probably going to take complications related to any time they do radiant stuff and start applying that to this. I don't know, maybe I'll make it like an 8 complication event, and that's when the Skybreaker squad strikes.
well, and the cool thing is there are definitely some stat blocks out there in the world guide for like having a second ideal one show up, and then if they take care of that guy, well, there's a fourth ideal one that can show up. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
I think that it would be like, throw in a second ideal Skybreaker and 2 squires, and then it's like, oh, one of them's going to get away because they can
yeah.
fly, so it's pretty easy for them to get away.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta love those Skybreakers. Poor Skybreakers catching a bad rap.
Well, listen, if you didn't serve a evil jerkwad, you wouldn't have a problem.
Yep. I mean, I guess that's true.
uh,
So,
but yeah. So it's been very fun. And then in terms of like, just us hanging out, um, there's plenty of community spaces for the CosmereRPG that are going around. I know the like open alpha for Project Folio starts soon. I think they've said August 5th or 6th.
yeah, so by the time this episode airs, it should have started by now.
Yeah, it should have started by now. Our buddy Carson is doing an awesome blog of character builds on, it's called Talent Scout. So Plotweaver Talent Scout at wordpress.com or /wordpress.com. I don't know how those things work. We'll put a link in the description.
And that might finally give us the excuse to bring Carson back on, because he did our kind of like Nexus wrap up episode with us and Jonathan. But also we've got a growing list of character build requests that people want to hear about. So as Carson is mining some of those, building characters he wants to build, like I think it might be a good idea to bring him on and one, let him advertise the thing on here too more, and then two, that might be a good time for us to talk about just high level how we would build some of those and start like just adding those in the description every once in a while, and maybe even release a couple special episodes for the Patreon. How's that for a transition?
There you go. The Patreon. Kyle, what do people want to know about the Patreon?
Yeah, so patreon.com/start of opportunity. I'm giving you the same spiel I always do, but we give you episodes early. We release Patreon exclusive ones this month. I don't remember off the top of my head which one it was. But we've had like a theory crafting episode that we did in the middle of our interview with Literary Trope. I've been releasing some of my Jordan Con interviews that like I'm saving as backups in case, we have vacation, stuff like that. But this episode will have aired by the time I release the Brotherwise AMA early. But yeah, we will be having just different episodes that'll pop on there. And that's also where you can see some of, we do try to keep it as CosmereRPG focused on here as we can. But with Patreon, we're also going to be doing more stuff like, hey, let's talk about Mass Effect. Let's talk about Star Wars, where we don't have to tie them back to the CosmereRPG. Mm-hmm. Where on here, we will do some of that where, hey, like if you were going to build a Mass Effect character in the CosmereRPG, what would that guy look like? What kind of Radiant Order would Thane be? Like whatever you want to do with that, like we can easily start working some of those in. But there we might just do, hey, like Irving, what are the top 5 video games that influenced you or that you like to play, or vice versa. So we're constantly playing with different ideas that we can have on there. If you have ideas of stuff you want to see, we're all about just doing some random stuff there. Coming up in August, I'll be releasing an interview that Krishna and I did early. It will come to the channel at some point as well. But we did over an hour with one of the composers from the Wheel of Time TV show. Famously did the song The Hills of Tanchico that Elaine sings in the bar. But yeah, we had a blast talking to him at Jordan Con, and we will probably bring him back on at some point because he's a massive Sanderson fan, just to talk about the books. But we also have an interview coming up where we're going to be interviewing an author that Krishna and I have just both read in the past year, Aparna Verma, who wrote The Phoenix King and The Burning Queen and is currently writing the third and final book in that trilogy. Irving and I are going to be sitting down with her in August, so that will come to the Patreon early too. So you'll get to see some insight into stuff outside of just the Sanderson fandom on our Patreon. So,
and Kyle, take us away.
Yeah, so again, find us on patreon.com/chart of opportunity. You can follow us on all the socials and all of that good stuff. But we are coming up on the Mistborn release, so now we have even more character builds that we can talk about as we start talking about world hopping. So
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to
Those
that.
are very fun. All right.
Awesome. But until next time, let's roll the plot die and raise the stakes. This has been Complicated Opportunities.
Woo!